When did someone challenge you at something you were an expert at? The property management company for my homeowners association insisted that I had received emails that I never received, so I asked them to prove that I had received them. They said they're sure I received them. I'm a software engineer, and at the time I had just finished an enterprise email delivery system, like an in-house Constant Contact. I knew the rules of the Can-Spam Act by heart. I knew exactly how their system worked. So this real bitch of a property manager said, "I know how email works. You wouldn't understand." I mentally did the arrogant knuckle crack and started to explain, very methodically, how email delivery works and how they track various actions. I spent about 5 minutes detailing my credentials and why I was absolutely certain they had never sent me the emails they alleged I received. When I was finished, the whole board just agreed to waive the fines. Not me, but my friend used to ride a unicycle as a kid. He worked construction and they were working at a house that had an old unicycle. The other workers tried riding it and immediately fell off. My friend walked over to it and inspected the unicycle like it was the first time he ever saw one. Them said it didn't look that difficult. They all laughed at him and he said he thought he could ride it. Eventually one of them bet him $100 he couldn't ride it. He jumped on it and immediately rode down the street. Kinda the reverse for me. I'm a physical education teacher and I had a student that took a pretty bad tumble in class. Hit her head on the wall. Pretty clear concussion symptoms, so we get her stable. Call mom and dad to come get her. Dad shows up and I start going through the concussion symptoms and treatments with him, letting him know that a doctor's visit is probably in order. Blah blah blah. I keep going on and on about concussions. He just politely nods and thanks me. He takes daughter and leaves. And I see my principal standing behind me and he can barely contain his laughter. Turns out Dad is an emergency room doctor. And he just sat there while his daughter's gym teacher gave him medical advice. My father trying to explain to me how computers and the internet work. After he's called me over to figure out why his computer and internet aren't working. And #X200B. Edit. Spoiler. It was because my mom downgraded their TV package. And they must have accidentally turned off the audio Wi-Fi, since the video Wi-Fi was still working fine. Medieval Fair. 2002. Carney running the fencing game picks me out of the crowd for being tall and challenges me to a free bout against the master. Not a lot of people fence, so his gambit probably worked most of the time. But when he handed me that saber, I handed him his ass. By no means an expert. I'd probably rate in the 1500s. But I've played chess since I was a small child and was the best player in the middle school chess club. The guy who owned the pool hall me and my juvenile delinquent friends hung out in was talking about how dumb kids are these days and said he bet nobody in my group of hoodlums could play chess. I beat him soundly. Then again in the rematch. I'm no expert, but people never assume I can play pool. I grew up with my parents going to the pub, so as an early teen would play a lot of pool and got pretty good. There's been a number of occasions where I've got us a round of drinks or stuck it to some knob who's hogging the table. While I was in high school, I was the reigning city fencing champion in both the youth and adult tournaments. My high school decided to do a school-wide fencing unit for phys. Ed. And the coach they brought in to teach all of the students was my actual coach. During my classes, my coach naturally brought me up to help demonstrate the various moves. But for some reason one of my classmates didn't understand that I wasn't chosen at random. He started talking shit about how I looked like I didn't know what I was doing, and how he could probably kick my ass in a duel. Now, He actually was pretty good for a guy who'd never fenced before. And at the first opportunity to actually have a bout, he decided to have a go at me. I picked him apart and did not give up a single touch, and used the opportunity to practice my parry and ripostes. I admit, I took a bit of sadistic pleasure in thoroughly beating him. Afterwards, my coach made a point of congratulating the other guy for doing so well against the city champ, which changed his attitude considerably. Went to a couple's night once and the guy had wall-to-wall movies and framed posters in his basement. Super into it. Mentioned I used to be a movie nerd but not so much anymore. He challenged us to a movie trivia board game, kinda in a condescending way, and I tried to politely decline, but my GF insisted we play. They went first, missed the question, then we ran the table. Never heard from them again. A beginning writer asked some advice about a basic drafting method, so I offered my point of view. Some tough guy decided to butt in and say that what I said was proof I'm not a real writer, and it was obvious I would never be published. At that time, the second or third book in my trilogy was about to be released. I asked a guy not to tell my editor that I wasn't a real writer. I have been wrapping my family's Christmas presents since a very young age. It's the perfect activity to focus my crippling perfectionism with my overall anxiety-riddled self, to create a beautiful masterpiece that would make anyone think twice about discovering the mysteries beneath the colorful paper and bows. I have just always loved to do it, and my mom was more than happy to not spend hours wrapping presents. Flash forward to the company Christmas party in my late 20s. We are split into teams to compete for random prizes. I am up for the next game. I had no idea what I would be doing. I see a big cardboard box, a necktie, wrapping paper, scissors, tape and a bow. I know what's about to go down and I am here for it. It's a blind present wrapping challenge. My competitors start talking about how they can wrap presents fast and I sit there silently staring down that cardboard box, knowing fully that the crowd is in for a show. Blindfolds, neckties, go on. We have a partner that isn't blindfolded that is supposed to give verbal directions. Just before the timer starts, I lean over to my partner and say quietly, "Are you ready for this?" And she just say, "What?" Bam! Timer starts. Partner tries to give directions at first and quickly realizes I'm way ahead of her. Before anyone else can even get their paper cut, I've got my box wrapped, taped, and bowed. I even folded the ends in, fancy, to have the triangles meet. And that, my friends, is how I earned the most satisfying $10 Starbucks gift card of my life and earned the title of Rap Master. My father-in-law challenged me about the capabilities of DVD. Specifically, he claimed that you could only have widescreen video, not 4:3, on a DVD disc. At the time I was employed as a DVD author. I authored the very first commercially available feature on Scenarist. I am literally acknowledged in the first edition of DVD Demystified as an expert. I had already by that time personally authored literally hundreds of DVDs with 4:3 video. He knew all of the above at the time, yet still insisted I was wrong. I have perfect pitch. It's not a thing I can turn off. Notes simply are a pitch clear as day. Much like how red is clearly distinct from green. Anyway, music class in junior high. Teacher explains that Mozart had perfect pitch and walks over to the piano, plays a note and says, and just by hearing it, he'd be able to tell you what now that was. Now can any of you do that? Quote, at the time, I honestly had no idea this was rare. Raise hand. Teacher with a smug look points at me and is gobsmacked when I answer correctly with note and Octave. Figures it's pure luck, so does it again and asks me to face the other way. I answer correctly again. Tries it with chords, sequences and 2 hands worth of notes. Still right every time. Ends with me playing back a short sequence after listening to it blind. That day, I learned that perfect pitch is actually kind of rare.